Well, hello and greetings, and thank you so much for joining me in this webinar, Eating Peace. These are 5 mental shifts that I'm going to share with you that break the spell of eating wars. It does feel like we're in a spell sometimes, doesn't it? Like a trance, something we just can't seem to pull it together or get it squared away. And this is actually the shifts that you're going to need to make in order to end and break that spell forever. And that is possible. It's completely possible because it's happened for me and for people that I've worked with. So, to begin this webinar, I'm so grateful for you joining me today. I wanted to include this quote from Jeff Foster, who is a sweet and kind spiritual author, spiritual teacher, and he shares here with us, we are only seeking ourselves in a million different ways, and the chocolate, or alcohol, or casino winnings never had the power to bring us home, ever. Addiction crumbles from the inside, for what we are is naturally at peace, naturally non-addicted. Now, that might feel practically impossible, not like your experience. It certainly wasn't mine. I find that imagery of seeking home, some sense of like, I'm home inside myself, I'm home in my own skin, never happened when it came to food or eating. So who this webinar is for people wanting freedom from obsessive thinking or eating, no matter what you weigh or what experiences you've had with eating. There's people that are completely normal weight that feel very obsessive in the head, people who are extra thin, people who are really heavy, men, women, all ages, all shapes and sizes of bodies. If you overeat or overthink about food, eating, or weight, you're welcome here. And this is for you. Here's what we'll cover today in the next 45 minutes. I'll share with you the 5 shifts that I've mentioned that I found necessary to end disordered eating or disordered thinking. And it doesn't matter what your experience is with that. So just to say eating disorder doesn't mean bulimic, anorexic, hospitalized. No, it can feel insane in the mind, even if your weight is normal. I'm going to share the number 1 spell that keeps us on the merry-go-round of pain. I find that to happen in shift 1. How to lose your food religion. Doesn't it feel like the way you believe about food and the way you think about eating is like something you're kind of almost worshiping, even though you don't like it? That all begins with shift 2 on how to dissolve that. How to reduce anxiety about cravings and wanting. So much anxiety about that I've experienced in my life, and not just about food. And how to enter peaceful eating without dieting, without finding a special food plan. It doesn't mean it's bad to have one, but without gaining a bunch of weight, without doing anything hard that you don't want to do. So, my promise to you, promise is a strong word, but I have one that I will share with you a step-by-step process that could end your insanity with eating forever and heal your disordered eating and disordered thinking. There's no special guarantee or promise for when or by the end of the webinar it'll be gone forever. That would be a little nutty. But I do feel, based on experience and years of working with people and watching this within myself, that it's possible for anyone to experience the peace of freedom around obsessive and compulsive thinking about food and eating and your weight. I love this quote from Ramana Maharshi. He said, "All that is required to realize the self is to be still." I even knew that in my mind, but how to do it, boy, that was difficult. So, is this you? Do you have some days where you maybe eat well? You do it right, but you can't seem to maintain it. Like you're haunted by thoughts of falling off the wagon, as we say. Do you start out periodically maybe every Monday or, today in the morning with a new resolve to quit the overeating, applying your tools, get this thing figured out, stop eating off balance. I can't tell you how many times I did that. Do you secretly think you're incapable of healing from this tortured way of being with food in the world? I thought this isn't, potentially, is it not possible for me to be healed of this? Maybe I'll just never find the answer, especially when it goes on for a long time. And do you see other people who appear to eat normally? They look normal. They look beautiful even, like celebrities or athletes or stars, but maybe even just friends or family members, and you have no idea how they do it. I would just look at people and think, like even sitting at a meal and there they had their food in front of them and they looked like they didn't care what was going on with the food. And I just was like, how do you do that? So this is familiar. Do you find yourself going to parties or big gatherings with lots of food in the environment, and you find yourself tortured by the presence of the food the entire time? Oh, you might not even be able to hear what people are saying in conversations. Like you just can't even be present. Or maybe it feels like you have a violent voice of doom that's really quite vicious. I'm very familiar with that voice. It's telling you that there's something wrong with you, you're greedy, and you just want way too much. Or have you tried 1,000 solutions like I did? Overeaters Anonymous, taking the EST program, taking other immersion intensive, mind change your mind type of programs, context trainings, therapy, cleanses, A Course in Miracles, and still your problem persists. I would just research and more things would sound good all the time. Actually, many things that I did, I'll share with you in a moment, contributed to the healing. I'm sure of it. But it just seemed like so much to try. So I find that ultimately the problem is, especially when I was still suffering from it, was not making what I call the shifts in thinking at the root. Almost like if you have the weeds and the roots are in the ground, we're all supposed to pull the weeds out by the root. If you just chop them off where you can't see them anymore at the top of the dirt, they're going to just keep growing. It almost seems like this kind of thinking is a little bit like, very dramatic to say it, but like cancer. If you have cancer in the body, sometimes when it's entered the system of the body, what we know about cancer is that even if you pulled out a tumor or cut something out, you're not sure if you've got the whole thing. There's like tendrils and cells and things that are maybe throughout the whole system in different areas. It's sort of like that. So not to be too frightening about it, but I just think that this problem lies, what I've experienced, in shifting thinking at the very root and core level, like where it all starts, which is in the mind. So what I'm going to share today, really explain, are these shifts. But once you make them, you have no desire to overeat or undereat or purge or binge or do crazies with food. Like you just aren't crazy and insane anymore with food or eating. Your wonky eating patterns will completely fall away. It's not on or off or I'm stuffing myself or I'm starving myself. You'll realize the belief that something is wrong with you is not true. Like you feel that in your body at the core. You might even think that now, but sometimes there's places where doubt appears. You'll be able to be with yourself and feel at home, no matter what you eat or what you look like. And you'll know how to work with troubling emotions and feelings. They seem to have such an impact on the way we respond to food and eating. They won't trigger you into weird eating patterns. It's like, we're not looking for like constant peace at all times is the only way to solve this problem. We actually, probably as a human, will experience fear, sadness, pain, stress, anxiety, but it doesn't mean we need to eat when we have those. Emptiness. And you'll be able to eat with a joy and a peace you may remember from when you were a child. Every so often I work with somebody that says, I can't ever remember having joy or peace with food. I started so young. But a lot of us do remember when we weren't concerned. I remember that. You'll feel ease and joy and trust with eating and foods that feel natural and normal without shame. Everyone has that possibility. Anyone can get there. So a little bit about me. My name is Grace Bell, and I'm a certified facilitator of the work of Byron Katie, which is important in this process because that addresses the stress in the mind. But I also have quite the history of off-balance eating, shall we put it that way. The picture on the left here that you see, I'm on the far left, and these are my 3 sisters, 4 girls in the family in 5.5 years. And that year is the year I went on a diet. And you look at me and I'm normal. Many of us have the experience that when we look like normal weight, normal size, I thought I was fat. And I went on a diet with my mother. That's my first diet. There was so much, I call it casting a spell. It was like it was already underway. In fact, it even started a little earlier when I was 8. I have a vivid memory that I'll share with you in a moment. But there was a build-up to get to the point of even wanting to go on a diet in the first place. But thankfully, with so much effort and work and striving and research and trying so many different things, which I hope you don't have to try all of them like I did, my last binge, all-out binge, was in 1990, and I feel like a normal eater. There were some things that kind of resolved themselves and even got more normal, if you put it that way, calmer, even more free from that point in these previous 10 or 20 years. But really, it's a goodbye to that intense, insane binge eating. So, why would you listen to me? Why would I, just because I have experience of having an eating disorder and then having it end doesn't necessarily mean I know how to help other people. But a little bit of assistance. This is a picture of me just a few years ago speaking at a convention that was called the Institute for the Work of Byron Katie, and a convention where I got the opportunity to share about using the work and using self-inquiry to understand and heal compulsions, especially eating compulsions. And I had tried the 12 steps, inpatient treatment, dozens of therapists. I think I added them up once, and there was like 26 or something that I'd seen in my lifetime. A Course in Miracles, as I mentioned, which is a beautiful program called Living Binge Free that was a real deep immersion with many modules and a great teacher. I learned a lot there. Carolyn Costin's eating disordered work. I even worked with her. I trained with her just for one session as a therapist, getting CEUs myself, and she does very, very profoundly good work, inpatient programs. But also, I got a master's degree in applied behavioral science, and I was studying healing from eating disorders during that time I was getting a master's degree, and I barely entered the period of time when I had my last binge. I was still sometimes obsessed about that I was still too fat, and I still had those kinds of thoughts in my mind, even though I wasn't no longer binge eating. And then I went to the School for the Work in 2005 of Byron Katie, and I became so acutely aware of my terror of hunger and my terror of abandonment. I'd abandoned myself over and over again since I was 14 or even before that. I was aware of the terror of fullness, like how wrong it is, and judging it, and an acute fear of rejection. And all this kind of came into my consciousness in a really, really strong, vivid way. And I thought, oh my God, I think I know why I ever had this eating disorder and what's been going on. And it just kind of, the whole entire history of it dropped like a weight off my shoulders. And it simply wasn't there as a concern. I had no more concern that it would come back. Even if it had been 15 years, since I had any kind of binge episode. I still had a sense of control or worry or anxiety off and on that whole 15 years, but then it was just done. From this point forward, it was done. So that's why I then also, amongst all this training, is such a sincere desire to help other people, because I remember the torture was so bad, it felt like I wanted basically to not live. It's like, if this is the way life is with this kind of thinking, I'd rather not. So, I mean, you could call that suicidal mentality about this. It's very serious. It felt very serious at the time. So let's go into the 5 shifts. How did I come to find them and heal my eating issues and then help others also? It's sort of funny. This is a little bit of a funny story, but I want to distill the 5 shifts that have worked permanently for me. It's a little bit of a funny story how I came into it. It's because I felt resistance, just like I did with like, oh my God, not eating disorders. People began to ask me, well, how did you, and I love that you do the work of Byron Katie. I love that you're so aware with your self-inquiry and mindset and how that's working and addressing stress and pain and suffering in the human condition. And I've worked with people. I began to work with people a lot, one-on-one, teaching retreats, but I did not really reveal or talk much about eating issues unless somebody happened to mention it. And as I was more forthcoming, and I definitely didn't feel shame, just more revealing about my experience, more and more people asked me. And I realized they really want help with this. Many people really want help with this. And I would have loved that myself. So it was kind of funny. I was already into being a private practitioner, of a facilitator of the work of Byron Katie, working with many, so much wonderful like awareness and refinement of leading retreats. And it's about 4 or 5 years ago, I started, okay, it's just drawing me. It just shows me where to go, is assist people with this eating trouble. So let's look at shift number 1. It may seem rather simple, but it is noticing our concept that's running in the mind that what I'm experiencing in the presence of food, eating, or my body is not safe. It's not safe. My emotions aren't safe. Feeling isn't safe. It's almost sometimes like eating was like pulling the fire alarm. This is an emergency. The feeling of craving or compulsion or intensity or anger or avoidance. It's like, it feels like an emergency. It's urgent. Well, somebody believing that, like I have many times in my life, I'm not safe. I don't feel safe in the world. If you took me and I entered a room that was filled with giant buffets of food, then I would feel alarmed and nervous about all the food that was there. It would start making me think about it. Just a sense of, I can't handle the situation. I can't be trusted with food. I can't handle this meal. I don't know what to eat. I don't know what not to eat. There is something wrong with me when it comes to food. All these things contribute to a real dire lack of safety. It looks like a very haunted feeling. It's like, oh no. Just the minute you're saying, oh no, or your feeling in your body is, oh no, I'm not safe with this food. Whether I'm with other people or with myself, I seem to not be safe with food. I don't even keep myself safe with food. I binge from one end of the kitchen to the other when I'm all alone. I have to be careful. I have to watch out. I have to document. I have to manage. I have to be vigilant. It's very exhausting. So I want to mention somebody who definitely had this experience around food and eating. She was in the eating peace process. She joined the program in the group. And she had been a dieter since age 10. By age 22 or so, she was sometimes at the gym. She shared 4 hours in a day. She worked as an exercise instructor, so she had trained in fitness. She would lose weight with a goal in mind and wanted always to be thin, kind of up and down a bit. And she'd think, I'm going on that tropical vacation, so I'm going to lose weight. And then she went on vacation and she'd be scared of the barbecue and scared of the food. Like, oh no, I'm going to lose it. In the eating peace process, she dropped the dieting mindset, which I'll share about in a moment. It's one of the shifts, really. And she felt like at first she was falling. I sometimes think of it as falling, like Alice in Wonderland, falling down down that rabbit hole. Only it's not really a disappointing, negative, terrifying thing. You remember how Alice, when she falls slowly. It's kind of interesting. She can take a book off the shelf and read it and then put it back on the next shelf. So she felt like that, but then she noticed that even was only in her mind. It's this incredible lack of safety about not dieting, and that she was safe. Accept herself without a diet. What a relief. So she gave up dieting, and I think she told me it was 20 years of dieting, basically 20 years of thinking she should be on a diet or she is on a diet. And she shared recently with me, after being at least 1 year out of the eating peace process, she goes, then as I continued in that process of self-inquiry too, I noticed a deepening self-acceptance and a peace expanding in all areas of my life. I love how people find that. I have found the same. So Byron Katie says, it's the truth that sets us free. And you can find the truth only when you go inside. Going outside for a solution, trying to convince, is war. And I think of outside for a solution as being lots of the advice we get when it comes to food and eating. But fear is blind and deaf. So let's calm ourselves down and let's question that I'm not safe and have this shift of experience greater safety. Practicing safety in my own presence and in the presence of others, but really primarily around food and eating. The second shift is to stop having the ultimate goal in your life when it comes to this situation of food, eating, and weight be thinness, and to start accepting your body as it is. So I know that's strange. Now, not everybody is waiting to lose weight, but you can still notice that you might want to keep your thin physique. Make sure that you don't sway from, the way you've approached food, that hold on to it tight, like you've got something you need to keep. And just be anxious and nervous about something terrible will happen unless you are vigilant, right? So it's a tricky thing. So here's an interesting exercise. You see these silhouettes on the screen. What is very, very fascinating is to notice your own story of thin and fat, heavy and light. To actually observe what the mind has to say about what the images mean. So many of us have gotten into the deep story. It is a belief that I need to be thin. Whether I'm thin right now or not, I need to be. I need to either stay this way or get a little thinner or get a lot thinner. It is essential for my happiness. Now, it might be it might be nice to be thin. It might be comfortable being thinner, but it's like it gets to have this really deep perspective of actual essential for happiness, which can be questioned with the wonderful questions. Is that actually true? Who would you be without this story? Without this thought? What would that be like if you let go of it? So, when we believe thin equals I am good, I'm doing it right, I'm doing well, I will be accepted, what I noticed is my eating experience related to thoughts about what eating meant and what food meant, what hunger, fullness, satisfaction, and attraction all meant. When thin equals good, then all of those experiences that have to do with eating start to be like, sort of have this flavor of fear, like a little bit haunting, being careful with any of these sensations, hunger, fullness, satisfaction, attraction. I noticed that I had this conditioning, thin to win. Not all of us have heard that, but very helpful to wonder, win what? Praise, being attractive, being accepted, being wonderful. When this goal arises of being thin above all else, then the joy of actually eating food and nourishing myself, it took second seat. It's like, I don't care if you like it or not, you need to be thin. And when you have this goal above all else and you're not thin, or you're not thin enough, and you must maintain your thinness, then you have to grab, exert energy, feel afraid of, or enraged by overeating. Like overeating becomes a huge mistake, right? The other thing about thin equaling goodness is the right way to be thin is I constantly found proof of how thinner was better and fatter is worse. Other people said it. Look, it's on TV, it's in the movies, it's everywhere. It's in my family, it's in my mother, it's in my grandma, my grandpa. So my own healing was built entirely on questioning the belief that thinner is better. I could be on top of the world as a very thin person, like I was very good, and I could feel like crap if I was heavy. So the shape of the body determined my mood. And sort of course, not really. So my eating became a reflection, like a mirror, of my inner thinking and my inner feeling. There is just no escaping cause and effect, cause being the thought and effect being the outcome. I think, I feel, and then I behave a certain way, and then I've got my effect, the outcome. So if I hold the belief that thin is good, then food and eating wind up remaining dangerous because they could cause fatness. And my mind says, never let go of becoming thinner. You have to suppress your urges. The effect for me was despair, a sense of being controlled, and deep unhappiness. So I just really want to share that everything I'm sharing with you today is built on that foundation of not just having the thought I need to be thin, but letting go of perfectionism. All this whole thing leads to such a huge lack of trust in ourselves. So there's so much self-criticism, right? So we need to build a foundation of trust. And I know it's been hard to trust ourselves when we've done what we've done. But this whole problem, I also like to say, is actually okay that you've had it. on the flip side, in some ways, I questioned, which is I did the work. So I questioned. I had a self-inquiry process on the core belief. I lost my 20s to an eating disorder at one point, and I realized even that isn't true. So when I went to the other side, I'm like, oh, this is so terrible. I lost all those years I lost to an eating disorder. Well, yes, in some ways, who would have known if I had been able to stop sooner or never start in that same way? I don't know. It's not the way my life went. But no matter what happened, no one has to stay in the repetitive torture of believing their stressful story and believing I need to be thin or I need to be different. Okay, so we know what it's like to have solutions out there, which there are so many, tons of books about how to get your eating squared away and your compulsions arrested and your weight in the right place. And the number one solution to this problem of desiring a healthy, thinner body is a technical fix. I love that. Technical fix. Like, in other words, it's sort of a Band-Aid. Sometimes it's a very comprehensive Band-Aid, whole program, but it's usually from the outside in. Dieting, exercising, getting your food plan together. Do eat this, don't eat that. Get your food list, get your plan, measure this, weigh that. Like, you can't just leave it up to you freely by yourself. You can't be trusted. Remember that? Something broke in you, and so you have to do it this other way. You can never trust yourself. So, I like to say here in parentheses, it doesn't mean like if I am allergic to something that lots of people eat, that I should defy that and start eating it. So that's not what we're talking about here. This is just noticing the usual approach to something about our psyche is we're lost and completely confused, and so I need somebody to tell me everything to do. And we don't do that in the eating peace process, because I want you to find your own inner trust, so that no matter where you go and no matter what kind of food is around you and no matter what was happening in your life, wherever you are in the world, eating isn't just become something that is, to eat off balance is not an option you even consider. And you didn't have to shut it down or kill it, that option. It just becomes something you're not even interested in anymore. So, case study number 2, somebody else I want to share with you. A woman did the eating peace process, Sherilyn, and I loved hearing her perspective of it as she went through this a little bit later. When she was sharing, her first awareness of freedom was questioning the belief, I need to be thinner. And she did that early on. We do that early on in the eating peace process. She was actually in Hawaii, a tropical place, at the time she began the program on vacation. And she was wearing bathing suits, seeing herself in the mirror, hotel mirror, seeing herself in the glass and out on the beach, and just was like so dismayed and so disturbed by this belief. And it was an enormous relief to have her body right out there in the open, very much in her face, to be in this tropical place. And in using her own mind and through this work, she accessed a different kind of imagination. Instead of just assuming it's true, that what she is seeing is ugly about her body and that it needs to be thinner, which is very kind of negative, she began to use her imagination to see something supportive in it. And she felt a freedom that really kind of switched into place, kind of had a new perspective. And it remained steady ever since, which is really, really powerful. No longer concerned with, I need to be thinner. All right, so that leads us to shift number 3, which is basically something that has been woven through the first 2 shifts already, questioning our minds. We begin to use our imagination differently when we do this. We're trying on a new perspective. How do you question your mind? How do you actually change your thoughts or transform your thoughts or even just wonder about them? The work of Byron Katie. That's my absolute favorite. Some of you are here, or you've even heard me mention in my little introduction that I trained in this kind of facilitation, but really it's about seeing what's in the mind clearly and taking it through a simple process. Simple but not so easy. Simple but not so easy. But I love that there is a step-by-step process for this. So the way this inquiry works is you ask 4 questions. So for example, so many of us believe if I don't diet, like that thing that I just mentioned to you, oh my gosh, if I don't have a technical fix from the outside in, something terrible will happen. I will eat and eat and eat and eat. Question. First question in the process of the work. Is it true? and you get to answer. Second question, how do you react? Really, it's question 3. We always like to say, so is it true? And then we always have a second part B to that, is it true? If you say, yes, it's true, it's so true, you can ask, can you absolutely know that for all time with no shadow of a doubt? Is it absolute truth with a capital T, your thought? And question 3 is, how do you react when you believe this thought? What happens? Question 4, who would you be without this thought? Those are really profound questions, and I'm sharing the questions here with you, and it takes some meditation and some looking to be with those and understand even how to sit with them and wonder about them and answer those questions. The last step in doing the work of Byron Katie is finding something that's called the turnarounds. The turnaround to this one, so it's just the opposites, and every kind of opposite we can possibly come up with. The opposite to this one, if I don't diet or control food, something terrible will happen, is if I don't diet and if I don't control my food, something wonderful will happen. Could that be just as true? The old way of thinking here, without inquiry, is I am too much, I want too much, I'm greedy, I need to control and punish and follow a plan and make sure I'm doing it right, and then I'll feel peaceful and happy. And this is what is called often, violence and war will lead to peace, which we see in the human condition, don't we? But not ultimately to peace, right? It's not resolved and settled and done. But the idea is I'll suffer now and then later I'll be happy. So a woman who I don't really think of as calling a case study, because she came to work with me when I began to work with people one-on-one, and it's before the Eating Peace program existed. So she came to work with me, and she had lost 100 pounds in the past before we ever met. But when she got down to that goal weight, she was incredible about staying on this certain food plan. She had not questioned her thinking about being thin or about eating or about body shape and all that it truly meant. And when she was at her low, ideal, quote unquote, weight, she got very involved with a lot of men because she felt available and eligible, and she was single and wanted to be partnered. But she was getting involved with so many, she got totally overwhelmed, exhausted, stressed, and really hurt. And she gained all her weight back plus more. It was like she terrified herself because she didn't have inquiry. And this isn't the only reason people gain back their weight, but we do know that it's something insane, like 99% of the people, I don't have the good statistics right off the top, but we don't even really need to know the numbers. We've all heard about how you can do this kind of sense of control. I'm going to crack down and get controlled. And had somebody else before the Eating Peace process existed too, who worked with me, and she had not eaten sugar for 4 years of her life. That's a long time. And still obsessed about sugar all the time. Poor thing, I just remember that. It's so difficult. So without discovering what was at the bottom, at the root of this, and some of these, the ways we're living and the way we're seeing and believing things, it doesn't get healed, and then it's just always running in the background like a virus in a computer, right? Seems to be working on the outside, but it's not really all that great. So I find there's so much peace in just the general concept. What if you could be okay with what you inherently are right now? And the raw material that is you as a human, no matter what you've ever experienced, no matter what kind of weight you've gained and lost and how you've eaten, we don't even have to know all the reasons why you ever ate in the first place, or if there's something wrong with you, why you're so compulsive. The thoughts that you're thinking may be outdated or ready for an upgrade or no longer working, and they may even scare you, but you can question them. So, case study number 3. Alyssa, she was in the eating peace process, and she investigated a repetitive moment on a typical day. She felt such insight, and this was because she was doing the work, and we were doing the work together. Everyone's doing the work on eating, compulsions, sin and fat, fears, and she noticed her 4-year-old daughter was having a tantrum, and she felt incredibly impatient. She noticed her thoughts. It's wrong for my daughter to want something. I have to say yes to make this tantrum stop. I can't say no when I feel upset and having a tantrum with eating and food. So I can't say no to myself, she noticed. The only way to stop the tantrum is to say yes. She noticed she had that same thought about herself as she did about her child. Some of us begin to notice these parallels that are running in our lives. So her turnarounds were, I am in favor of tantrums and demands. Instead of being against this tantrum that she's observing and in the presence of in a 4-year-old child, which happens to be her daughter, what if she had the feeling just inside noticing, I'm in favor of this? It's right to want food or anything. And I like to add here, we often think that we're in charge of what we want and our desires and that we can fix it. And I just say, what I've noticed about myself is it's too late. You already want them. You can't fix it. You can't really undo what you want. You already want it. You wanted it a second ago. But we can sit with it and see it and study it and be with it. We don't have to just, since we want it, go get it. So I do not have to say yes for the tantrum to stop. That's not the only way for a tantrum or a craving or an urge to stop. In fact, the way Alyssa noticed with her daughter was she has to wrap her arms around her daughter. That's what she felt like doing once she inquired. And she could be that with herself. She could offer compassion. The way to stop the tantrum, the urge, the craving, is to be with it and stay present with it and not against it and not try to make it go away. We have a lot of exercises for how to do that in the eating peace process. So just a quick summary, quick recap of what we've talked about so far. We need to question the belief that we're not safe around food, which only gives the mind a job to be worried and anxious and watching for danger, right? The nervous system gets activated. It feels impossible to relax. So we need to just begin to orient ourselves to safety with eating. Number 2, second shift, we need to give up being thin, thinner, thinnest. And the third is that we're using the tool, the incredibly powerful tool, the work of Byron Katie, to question our thoughts. I love this. You can tell I love the Wizard of Oz, and they're going down the Yellow Brick Road. All right. We're on our way to the Emerald City. It's a journey. Okay. So the fourth shift, eat whatever you really, truly want. Gasp. So most of us will think, well, what I truly want is wrong. It's impossible. That'll never work. Right? We have felt so out of control. It's like we're in a spell or a trance of totally out of control. I mean, that's what binges felt like to me, overeating. Control is the solution for out of control, we think, in that wonderful world of duality. And the mind definitely is it'll just step to what the best plan for the opposite of out of control is control. But linked to this are the ideas of it's better if they tell me what to eat. I must follow some rules. I must be vigilant. I must feel horrible when I do not follow the rules and regulations. And that's often what a diet winds up feeling like, or a special food plan done out of fear. So diet plans can make things complicated. Sometimes people think it makes them easier, and in some ways I totally understand that. The thing is, though, it becomes your fault if you fall off the diet, right? Like the reason you're failing is because of your wanting problem that you can't control. So friends and family might see your weight climbing up again, or they see you're unhappy, or that you're eating only a salad with dressing on the side at a big feast. You know, you're doing that thing like where you're restricting everything. Maybe you don't accept invitations. You stay away from food. You don't feel present. It's you. That's what you think about yourself, and that's what you think they think. But your wanting still never goes away, so this problem persists. So I just think it's so powerful to use self-inquiry. What if you question the thought, what I want is too much, and so therefore I need control? You notice how they're kind of linked right together, problem and a solution. So we can question that. We can break those two things apart. That doesn't mean to question that what you want is wrong. Doesn't mean that if you're a vegan, you shouldn't be vegan anymore. Or it's like you have a way of eating that brings you joy, you shouldn't do that. Or if you're a plant-based diet person, that isn't the way to go. It might be fabulous if that's the way to go. It's the rest, it's the energy that it's done with. It doesn't mean that if you care about labels, you should stop caring. Or if you're diabetic, you should now start eating sugar all the time. That's still in the old way. It's like shoulds and rebellion and wild, chaotic freedom. It's not really freedom. So what would it really be like to never think about what you're supposed to be eating tomorrow, or that you could do it wrong? The peace you would feel is what it's supposed to feel like. Losing the fear of eating is so wonderful. It has been so wonderful for me. Eating falls into the role it's supposed to have in the world, like being like a little kid, eating with gusto and joy, innocently. You get to taste a huge variety of foods, even if you have some that you never eat. You don't have thoughts like, this is horrible, you're going to get fat, you're failing, you're a bad person, running all the time. So many people think if they eat whatever they want, they will become the size of a whale or an elephant. So there's an underlying belief that what you want is wrong and bad and unworkable. All right. This is like, let's imagine, just to take this exercise just a little bit farther, buffet horror. You know, we have this danger zone, buffets, terrible. But you could go from buffet horror to buffet heaven. So just close your eyes for a moment while you're listening to me. Let's say no sugar is ever allowed, ever in your life, ever. What does it feel like to be at a buffet where there's a whole bunch of desserts right there? And you have that kind of energy about it. It's super intense, and it's like a little bit scary. And oh my God, there it is. I don't know. It just sets up sort of a huge push-pull feeling. It certainly did with me. So what I love noticing about wanting is you can want what you really want. You can find out what you really want. You actually don't want to binge eat or starve yourself or diet or have all this junk food, junk thoughts in your mind about food, or you wouldn't be here. So you actually, like at the buffet piece, it's probably fine with you to let all that food be there. There's all this food in the world. Okay, it's fine. What you really want is to be comfortable in the presence of all that food, or a whole bunch of sugar and desserts, or whatever it is that ails you, that pulls you, you know? So I want to tell you about one more person. Diane, she enrolled in the Eating Peace process, and she began to study really, really intensely what she wanted. I love what she had to share about it. And she noticed and accepted what she really wanted already, what she already wanted. You know, not fighting. It's like, there it is already. Instead of being against it and just allowing it to come in as information. And she shared this vivid memory from a lecture she had gone to many, many years before, where the person speaking said, "The whiter the bread, the sooner the dead." And I had to chuckle. It's such a fearful thought. And she was really scaring herself. And what was really funny is she came to the Eating Peace retreat, and I just happened to have a sandwich that had white bread. I do sometimes eat regular bread, very rarely. Well, that's what's kind of funny. I just didn't even think about it. I actually told somebody, bring me a sandwich, whatever it was, for the lunch. And it turned out it had just this white bread. And she was like, my God, Grace eats bread? And it doesn't mean that you should eat bread. So some people won't and don't like it and can't, and it doesn't work with your body. That's totally fine. But it was really interesting how she had gotten so scared of it for so long, and she just thought anybody who was calm wouldn't eat that. So instead, she began to notice what she wanted and actually give it the green light, not as a secret, rebellious eater, but right out in the open, in front of the world. Like if it was chips, okay, let's try a few, and not be so frightened and terrified of it. So the last shift is working with a mentor, working with a guide, a group, having a shared intention, finding support. It doesn't mean you have to do it in the Eating Peace process, but it is so immensely beautiful and valuable to me. It has been. Sometimes we've had a mindset that's been in place for years, and these beliefs determine what we do, how we eat, the energy with which we're eating, the attitude we have towards our body. It's just been repetitive for year after year, and we need to investigate the stories in order to behave in new ways. You can't just say, I won't think that anymore. It's like very helpful to do the work, to understand, to have your mind be understanding instead of terrified. It's wonderful to be with a group who all share the same embarrassing thoughts or difficult or troubling thoughts, and with a mentor who has identified the stressful thoughts that fuel off-balance eating. So you don't have to just wonder, I don't know what I'm thinking. I just feel awful. I'm here to help with how to articulate what it is we're actually feeling. So connecting with others, connecting with a mentor, it's like connecting with yourself. That's what happens when we connect in a group. It certainly happened for me, even though I'm an extreme introvert and probably would prefer to do things all by myself. I worked with a group long ago, and honestly, it was the primary thing that broke down my confusing beliefs about eating and food. It was actually, to be honest, before I ever learned about the work of Byron Katie. But as I shared earlier, the work of Byron Katie made things really clear and simple. And I kind of said, oh, I see. And I think the tool is amazing. So you can keep going and looking with your own mind, looking at your own mind and doing the work. But it's really powerful to have somebody hold your hand along this journey so you can break apart the stressful beliefs that keep this eating thing going. Like we just refocus and come back down the river to the ones that are about eating, food, and our bodies. So if you think you want to join the next Eating Peace process program, I'd love to talk with you and support you in the best way I possibly can. The way I am now doing interest and entering into the Eating Peace process is talking to people one by one, because I want to make sure it's something that really feels right for you. Some people have felt so incredibly ashamed, so magnificently like failures that it's hard to imagine coming into a group and having that be satisfying and having that actually work for them. And I don't want anyone to fall between the cracks and like fade into the distance and not show up. And so it's wonderful to meet and connect and see if it's really right for you. What I like thinking about this as is a place to just introduce one another to ourselves, because who this program is for is it's somebody who really wants to help doing this from the inside out, without a diet plan and without a gym training schedule, and who's willing to participate. You don't have to jump in and speak all the time, but be there and show up for the work, do the work. who it's not for, I think of this as it's not for everyone. So to have this kind of application brief process to share first is important. You have to be willing to show up and do the work and be able to have enough compassion with yourself to relax some of your shame or the urge to escape. So I'm just inviting you to book your conversation. Everyone I've ever met who has healed from eating issues has gotten help from others. It's okay if that's one-on-one. It's okay if that's in some other kind of a group. I myself got immense help. There's no obligation to enroll in Eating Peace process. I really want to just genuinely get an introduction from those who are really drawn. So you book it if you feel like, yes, I want to know more and I'd like to explore what my next best step might be based on my own experience and based on my process. So head to eatingpeaceprocess.com/schedule-call. Schedule-call. So you just see it right here on the screen. Just copy that right into your screen. eatingpeaceprocess.com is my website, /schedule-call. And you'll see information on there about how to set up a time and how I can get back to you. It's a very simple form. And you can also just simply send me an email if the tech or the page or something doesn't work for you. Just send me an email, grace@workwithgrace.com, and we'll set up a time to talk. And I'd say set aside 45 minutes, up to 45 minutes. Maybe only 20. So it's just a brief conversation. There is no charge. It's completely free. All right. I hope this webinar helped, and I wish you all the blessings of a wonderful, peaceful, enlightening journey on this wonderful journey of eating peace, ending eating battles, and finding eating peace. Lots of love.